and welcome back to a new IELTS Express lesson. Today we're going to focus on grammar again, but this time we're going to focus on misplaced modifiers. In my first lesson I talked about dangling modifiers, so make sure you check it. Okay, let's have a little bit of a recap what modifiers are. Modifiers are words or phrases that dress up otherwise plain feelings. And it's really important for modifiers to stick close to the word or words they're modifying, because when they stray too far, they become misplaced modifiers. And if they get too far, it may look like they're modifying something else. For example, take a look at this sentence. She saw a puppy and a kitten on the way to the store. Now, this kind of grammatical errors can lead to reader confusion, and we're going to see why the sentence is wrong and how it can lead to confusion. Okay, so where should modifiers be placed? As I said, they should be very close to the thing being modified, directly next to the thing being modified, either before or after, just like in these examples, sometimes with a helping verb. Okay, so what is a misplaced modifier? Well, it's a common grammatical mistake in which the modifier strays too far from the word or words they're modifying. Okay, so as I said, the sentence, she saw a puppy and a kitten on the way to the store. In this sentence, it looks like the puppy and the kitten are actually going to the store to buy something, whereas in the second sentence, there is a person who's actually doing the action on the way to the store, and the person saw these two animals, a puppy and a kitten. So a little bit of reordering of the words can clear everything up. So let's get started. We have different types of misplaced modifiers, everything, all shapes and colors for everybody. We're going to start with adverbs and adjectives. And I would like you to have a look at these two examples. Now, a commonly misplaced modifier is usually an adverb, because adverbs modify both verbs and adjectives. And these misplaced modifiers often sound correct, but they're not. Have a look at these examples of misplaced adverbs, and you're going to see how a quick wording change can clear them up. Now, the modifiers are underlined and their nouns are in bold. Okay, he nearly drove the car for 6 hours, and he drove the car for nearly 6 hours. And you'll often find an adverb between the subject and the verb of a sentence, but unless it's modifying the verb, it's a misplaced modifier, like in this example. In this situation, the adverb nearly is modifying the adverb 6, not the verb drove. So all you have to do is to put the adverb in front of the adjective it's modifying, and voila, everything is done. Moving on to the next example with Iris and her exams. And because adverbs can modify both adjectives and adverbs, they are easily misplaced. Like in the first situation, Iris almost failed every exam she took. Now, moving one word gives these two sentences very different meanings. Almost every exam, Iris failed almost every exam. Okay, so she took. It's just a switch of the words here. In the first sentence, almost modifies failed, meaning that Iris barely passed every exam. However, the correct sentence shows that almost actually modifies every, revealing that Iris failed most of her exams and only passed a few. All right, ready for another one? Here it goes. People who laugh rarely are sad. People who rarely laugh are sad. This is another example of misplaced adverbs, which comes from using adverbs of frequency, and it can be a particularly challenging in shorter examples like these ones. And this situation is especially tricky because the modifier rarely is next to the verb it modifies, laugh. However, in the first sentence, rarely is also next to the verb are, making it sound like people who laugh don't become sad. But the actual intent of the sentence and the correct sentence in the second one is to show that people who don't laugh often, rarely laugh, have sad personalities. And yes, it is a subtle but very important distinction. All right, we're moving on to a different type of misplaced modifier, participial phrases. And no matter which type of phrase you use as a modifier, it needs to be next to the noun it's describing. And participial phrases are easy to misplace because they often come at the beginning or end of a sentence, while the word they're modifying might be in the middle of the sentence. And let's have a look at this example with Mary's birthday. Starting a sentence with a participial phrase like this one is an effective way to vary your sentence structure. However, you have to be sure that your subject comes right after your modifier in these cases. Eagerly awaiting her birthday, Mary's presents were all picked up and admired by Mary many times through the day. Now, the first sentence makes it seem as though Mary's presents were eagerly awaiting Mary's birthday. Since presents can't exhibit the emotional feeling eager, it's unlikely that this modifier is written correctly. And the most logical explanation is that Mary was eagerly awaiting her own birthday, and the sentence should be rewritten. So the modifier actually modifies Mary. All right, here's another one about Mitch. In this kind of situation, it's easy to mistake which noun you're modifying with a participial phrase, but it's important to check your meaning. Like in this kind of in these two sentences. Tired of the nights in hotels, delight overcame Mitch when his boss finally said he didn't have to travel anymore. Well, the phrase tired of all the nights in hotels is modifying the noun delight. And unfortunately, delight can't be tired because delight isn't a person. Instead, it's more likely that Mitch is tired. So we can correct the sentence by moving the proper subject next to the modifier. And voila. All right. Here's another one. James bought a horse for his son called Prince. Or James bought a horse called Prince for his son. As I said, participle phrases are quite tricky. And participle phrases that begin with the participles named or called can be problematic in a sentence. And if you misplace these phrases, you are renaming the wrong person, the wrong noun. And because the phrase called Prince comes right after son, it sounds like the son's name is Prince, which is probably not true. So a quick rewording can make it clear that the horse is named Prince and James purchased it for his son. Ta-ta! Now we're moving on to the last type of misplaced modifiers, prepositional phrases. This is another common modifying phrase that tends to be misplaced. And these misplaced modifiers can make one noun sound like it's in an entirely different and often strange location. For example, in this situation with the children on paper plates. Because modifiers can function as object complements in a sentence, it's important to know the difference between direct objects and indirect objects when you're using prepositional phrases as object complements. And now I know, okay, you spoke gibberish. Direct, indirect, prepositional phrases, objects, complements. If you feel like these words are quite UFOs to you and you don't really know what they mean, drop me a comment and let me know if you want a full lesson about direct objects, indirect objects, prepositional phrases, so on and so forth. So, prepositional phrases, if you don't know the difference between direct objects and indirect objects, you might accidentally modify the wrong noun, like in this kind of situation. She served sandwiches to children on paper plates. Okay. Now, because the indirect object children is next to the modifier, a reader may believe that the children were actually on paper plates. But on paper plates is actually modifying the direct object sandwiches. So all you have to do is to move sandwiches right before the modifier. All right, now We have a case of robbed officers over here. Whenever we're using passive voice in a sentence, it can also lead to prepositional phrases as misplaced modifiers, especially when they begin with the preposition by. As it reads, the first sentence sounds like the Atlanta police themselves robbed 3 officers, which is wrong because by the Atlanta police comes right after the participle robbed, not the verb reported. However, if you change the passive voice to the active voice in the second sentence, you'll find out that actually the Atlanta police is the subject of the sentence, reported is the verb, and that 3 officers were robbed last week is actually a noun phrase functioning as a direct object. And voila, everything is cleared. All right, I know it's a lot of information to take in. However, I have prepared 5 sentences for you to to have a look at the modifiers and put the modifiers in the right place. Please take your time. I have given you 3 minutes. If you need more time, then that's totally fine. If you finish in less than 3 minutes, then kudos to you, right? As promised, you're going to listen to some background music while you work. Here it goes. Okay, let's have a look at these. So the first one is the most common way to misplace a modifier is to put unnecessary words between it and the word or phrase it modifies. So the modifier here in the first sentence is the phrase after painting all day. It is clearly intended to refer to Mark rather than the chair, even though the chair is closer to the modifier than Mark. And This misplaced modifier can be fixed with a simple rephrase. Yeah, after painting all day, Mark admired the chair. The second one, about Will's long day. This is another common mistake. Remember, when the modifier simply refers to the wrong word. Here, happiness is being modified by the phrase bored of all the lectures. And obviously, happiness can be tired or bored or anything. It's not that kind of a noun. And it's Will who's bored with lectures and happy to be done. So we can easily express that feeling with a simple change of sentence structure. In the third sentence, it's an end to his driving. Again, a misplaced modifier can lead to a sentence that is grammatically correct, but fails to make sense here. George almost worked 12 hours a day to save up for the holidays. Grammatically, the above sentence is fine. In practice, unless George spends a lot of time almost doing his job, it's nonsense. Does it make sense? And basically, writers and linguists like to refer to Noam Chomsky's classic phrase in this kind of situation: colorless green ideas sleep furiously. Grammatically, yeah, it's fine, but otherwise it doesn't make any sense. So grammatically, that phrase is perfectly acceptable. It just doesn't mean anything. And misplaced modifiers can create the same effect, making it important to edit for meaning as well as grammar here. Okay, the one with the fluffy kitten. Again, one of the ways in which conversational English and formal English can differ is word order. And a sentence that clearly conveys its meaning in speech can fail to do so when written down. For example, Kim saw a fluffy kitten on the way to the office. Oh, very busy kitten. Once again, modifiers modifying the nearest possible word. And in theory, the sentence is describing a small, fluffy cat headed to work. Adorable, yes, but probably not what the writer meant. So the nice thing about misplaced modifier is that they're usually easy to fix. So simply rework the whole sentence so that the modifier is as close as grammatically possible to the word or phrase it modifies. On the way to the office, who? Kim saw a fluffy kitten. And the last example, we've got just a lousy dollar here. On occasions, as you know, misplaced modifiers can create a sentence that is possible, but not likely. Mrs. Macy gave me $1 only to rake her whole yard and wash her windows. Now, this sentence could be correct. The writer could be pleasantly surprised to receive a whole dollar to do all the work. Based on the amount of work done, however, it's more likely the speaker felt underpaid. So that requires us to move the modifier. Mrs. Macy only gave me $1 to rake her whole yard and wash her windows. It's a different perspective here. So again, catching misplaced modifiers is a question of critical reading, and sentences that seem to work can, on closer inspection, reveal syntactical errors, like in this kind of situation. And that's all for me. Thank you very much for having me today. I do hope you have learned something. If you had, I would really appreciate it if you could share my lesson or give me a thumbs up, drop me a comment whether, I don't know, you didn't understand that much, or I spoke too fast, or you want me to change the pace, or it was totally nonsense. I really need to hear your feedback. You can also follow me on my socials, on my Instagram, where I can regularly post quite a lot of useful information. And until next time, don't forget to subscribe. Again, thank you very much for watching and have a brilliant week ahead. Bye-bye.